Hey everyone, welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns. I'm really excited to be here with you today, and I'm really hoping that you're having a nice day today. I'm hoping that you're feeling good emotionally, physically, and mentally. And I hope that to facilitate that well-being, that you are taking time to be present and to accept the things that you're finding in your present moment, to approach things with a curiosity, which is going to help you to not judge things so much. And most of all, I hope that you're practicing a little compassion for yourself and for others, right? And a little kindness, because no matter what's going on, there's no need to not be kind. It's always valid to be kind and compassionate to others. And that's not because it's going to help them as much as it is because it's going to help you. Right? I mean, obviously, we want to be kind to others for their benefit as well. But really, by being kind to others, you're actually working on yourself. There's a great quote that I share with a lot of people by Ram Dass. Right? Ram Dass was a famous spiritual teacher and student of spirituality as well. And that actually speaks to this quote that he has. And this is something I can't show you because it's on my phone. I record these videos and the audio with my phone, and so I can't show you this, but I have on my screensaver, a picture of Ram Dass with this quote overlaying it, and the quote is, "I work on myself to help others, and I help others to work on myself." And so the idea there is that, as I just said, practicing compassion or forgiveness or even just kindness, yes, that is beneficial to others, but it's primarily and firstly it's beneficial to yourself, right? And that's kind of the thing, right? I was talking to a client of mine just a little while ago, a little earlier this morning, and it came up in our meeting that you know a lot of times when we're when we feel ourselves being triggered, or when we see others triggered by something that we might have said, right, it's very easy to get into this kind of mindset like, oh, I just said something to upset that person, or this person just said something to upset me, right? But the fact of the matter is that when we really are honest about it and we really look and see clearly what's going on, we find that it's actually the emotional reactions that we have to things, and even if it's not reactive but responsive, the emotions that we feel as a result of whatever triggers are happening, those emotions are happening inside us, right? There's never an emotion that comes from outside into us. So if somebody says, makes us angry, that anger is within us. The trigger is just that thing that kind of unleashes it, if you will, right? And so, and a lot of times this is so counterintuitive to us in our lives, right? Because so many times, maybe you felt yourself say this in some way, shape, or form, right? That we say things like, if only I could, if only this person would act differently in my life, then I would be happy, right? Or if only this person, if I didn't have to deal with them in this life, I'd be happy. Or if only I had a different job, if only my boss was a little more understanding or a little less, demanding of me, then I would be happy, right? And it's so easy for us, and so, again, intuitive for us to place that into the hands of another, right? To put our happiness in the hands of someone else, right? To say, again, just the simple fact of saying like, well, if only my partner was less X, right, then I would be happy, right? But the fact of the matter is that, again, just like I said a moment ago, the anger or the emotional distress that you might feel on whatever level, right? Whether it's an emotion of anger, an emotion of grief, emotion of shame, emotion of even happiness, right? Even on the positive end of the spectrum, the so-called positive end of the spectrum of the emotions, which again I say so-called in quotes because I want to be very careful again that it's not the good emotions versus the bad emotions, right? It's just the attractive end, the end of the end of the spectrum of emotions, which is attracting, that is built on attraction as opposed to repulsion, right? Is again the negative and positive emotions refer to negativity and positivity as the polarity of a magnet. right? I say this quite a bit, but you picture you have two magnets, you put them on a table, right? If you have the negative side facing the positive side, then when you push the magnets closer to each other, the one's going to go away, right? It's going to push each other away from each other, right? But when you flip them so that both I guess actually, if you have one negative and one positive, I guess they will attract. So if it's both negatives facing each other, they're going to push each other away, right? But if you have both positive, one of them is positive, it's going to attract each other, right? And so that's the essence of the way our emotions work too, right? But again, sorry to digress. The idea though is that the suffering that we feel or the happiness that we feel at any time, right, under any circumstances, that happiness or that suffering is coming from within us, right? And it is not dependent on anything that anyone else does or says, right? Now, of course, we can be triggered, right? Like something that someone does might trigger our emotion, right? But the emotion itself is something that happens within us, right? And this is true, like even if somebody is like an example of somebody yelling at you, right? Like if somebody is yelling at you, right? It's, we tend to, again, like the emotions, right? We tend to judge people's actions, right? So somebody yelling at me, that's a bad thing, right? But in reality, it's neither good nor bad. Right? All it is a little loud voice, right? And maybe some words that are not quite, pleasant or kind, right? But again, how that impacts me and how that what emotion that elicits from me has nothing to do with the loudness of someone's voice or the words that they're using, right? The emotion that it elicits in me is how I am, how I am responding to that loud voice, but based not on this person that's right in front of me. This is normally based in almost every case, it's based on something that happened to me a long time ago, right? So if I was yelled at a lot as a child, for instance, right, then I'm going to be particularly susceptible to being yelled at, right? And that's going to be something that really, maybe, either elicits an anger or it elicits a sort of a cover up and hide kind of feeling, right? It's either the fight or the flight, right? But that thing that happens for me has nothing to do with the person who's yelling at me, nor does it have anything to do with what they are yelling about, right? What it has to do is how I handle the emotions that are arising in me, right? And so what happens then is that, we can look at this as life. Life is essentially just millions and millions of little moments, little opportunities that we have to kind of course correct things, right? So when we feel something, when somebody does something, then we feel triggered, right? Or if we do something, we feel triggered, right? That trigger, that emotion that we feel, right? It's almost never, like I told you this a long time ago in one of my episodes a while ago now, that a good friend of mine and one of my former teachers and a person who's just a very, very special person in my life, she told me a very profound, statement at one point that she said, if it's hysterical, it's historical. Right? Which means that if I am getting very, very upset about something, right, it doesn't have anything to do with what is happening right here, right now. Okay, it has to do with something that happened to me as a child, or maybe even a couple of weeks ago or whatever, but it's not about right here, right now, right? Even the loss of someone, right? Even if you get a phone call and somebody has tragically been lost to you, right? Their life is ended, right? Even that emotion that you feel in that moment is not based on what's happened right now. It's based on your desire to not have this person leave your life, right? Which is not something that is happening right now. That's something that's based on, the whole subcontext of your history with that person, right? Now, I know this gets a little complicated. And if you have any questions about this, of course, I always welcome any questions or any comments that anybody might have on this, okay? But it's important to remember, though, that in every single moment, you have the opportunity to come back to right now, right? And sort of course correct yourself, right? So work on, and what this essentially means, right, is that the more that we can work on ourselves, right, the more that we can improve our ability to be present, to be accepting of what we find in the present moment, of what's arising in the present moment, the more we can be aware of our emotions, and the more we can get a clear signal of what those emotions are and what's happening inside of us. This gives us the opportunity to, again, moment by moment, make these little course corrections so that we don't wind up overwhelmed by our emotions. Because the problem with that is, right, and of course it's always important, and I try to say this all the time, right, that it's important to feel your emotions, right? And it's important to allow your emotions to be, right? If we try to stifle our emotions, or we try to avoid our emotions, or we try to stuff our emotions down or something like that, that's never a good thing. And especially when it comes to emotions like anger, that can be very, very damaging for you. Okay, so it's not about any kind of avoidance, right? In fact, it's the opposite. In fact, it's the clearer we can see what is happening as it's happening, right? That is what gives us the opportunity to make a decision right now that is beneficial to ourselves and to others, right? And because that's what happens, right? When we get this emotional overwhelm on whatever, again, let's say anger, right? Because it's a very overwhelming emotion, right? Anger is actually the definition of anger, or the essence of anger is to be out of control, right? That's what anger is, right? It's not a controlled emotion. It is something that is beyond control, right? And so when we're feeling that anger, right, what happens then is that we are not, while we're feeling that emotion of anger, that very, very powerful, out of control emotion of anger, right, we are not able then to process information clearly. Right? And the reason for this, and I talk about this a lot, and I hope I'm not boring anybody to hear this again, but the reason for this, right, is that when we're in an emotional state of overwhelm, in fact, I believe we just talked about this just yesterday, so pardon me for repeating it, but it is worth repeating quickly. When we're in that state of anger, right, the part of our brain that is active at that moment is the part of our brain that sits low down. It's like in the bottom area of your physical brain, right? And it's called the limbic area. It's the emotional center of your brain, right? And when that part of your brain is in control, right, the part that's not in control is the part that actually is responsible for thinking. Right? And so what we call that is, very, very literally, that could be called flipping your lid, right? Like you're blowing the top of your brain and you're just allowing all this emotion to just gush out, right? And so when we're in that place, right, we can't make decisions that are beneficial for anyone. Anything that happens is just, a 50-50 shot, right? Because we're not contemplating what we're doing, right? We're not measured. We're not cognizant of what we're doing at that given moment, right? So you can't make decisions. You can't really communicate effectively with others. You can't, you can't have sympathy or empathy or compassion for anyone in that moment, right? And so what are you doing there, right? You're not showing up. Right? You're not there for whatever's happening, right? And of course, now this can take a long time to resolve, especially a big emotion like anger, right? That can take oftentimes days to resolve that, right? And so that means that for days, then you're not able to make logical and beneficial decisions. You're not able to all the things that I just mentioned, right? Decision making. You're not able to communicate with others. You're not able to give your presence to others, right? And that's the most important thing we can do. It's the most valuable gift we have to give is our presence. Right? And that's not available to you when you're in that place of anger, because again, the part of your brain that's in charge at that moment is not the part that is associated with control and with being able to think. And so that's where the term that I think I mentioned yesterday also, the term top-down regulation comes in, right? The idea is that when we can use that thinking part of our brain, right? We can regulate that emotional part of our brain. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here, right? Is that every single moment of our lives offers us an opportunity to regulate our emotions, to get us back to a place where we are in control, right? And that's the point of mindfulness practices, right? Is that when we can look at this as a moment to moment experience, right? Which is what our emotions are, right? In fact, our emotions, on a physiological level, our emotions don't last more than 90 seconds on their own, right? But yet, like I said, it can take days to get over being angry at something or angry about whoever or whatever, right? Days, maybe weeks, maybe years, maybe our whole lives. How many people do you know who are just have an angry disposition, right? And so when we practice mindfulness and kindfulness and heartfulness, right? What we're doing is we're dwelling in this moment, right? And in this moment, we have the opportunity to again regulate from the top down, right? Regulate what's happening in our emotions. And again, it's not about not feeling the emotions, and it's not about avoiding them, right? But we can turn towards them, and we can regulate our own response to those emotions, right? And the benefit of that is that, so often what happens is when we're in a place of conflict, right? Like when we're feeling a sense of anger, again, let's just stay with the anger thing. When I'm angry, right, I am likely to, like, let's say, and this used to happen to me all the time. I'm going to start sharing some stories about my own anger, pretty soon here, because and I do this so that I can hopefully resonate with some people out there, and you understand that you're not alone, and that there's a way out of it, okay? Because anger can be one of those things that can really just take over your life, And let me explain to you what I mean. So let's say I am angry because of something that happened at work today, right? And then just, and maybe it's legitimate, right? Like somebody did something that was really just, really crappy, and I became angry by it. Now, again, the anger itself and the regulation of that anger is on me, right? But let's say I wasn't practicing mindfulness, and I didn't know this, and I couldn't control myself. I couldn't kind of, gain control over it. And so the anger was just kind of leading me, right? So then I come home, right? And the minute I walk in the door, let's say my partner comes over and says, "Hey, you're home a little late today. Did you still want me to cook dinner for you?" Right? Now, that's an honest and very simple and straightforward question, right? But when I'm in that place of anger, it's not coming through to me as an honest and straightforward and simple and legitimate question. It's coming through to me as some manifestation of this anger, right? Because the anger becomes this like filter, this prism that everything has to come through, right? And in that place of anger, in that dysregulated place of anger, I am likely to say something, and this is just a very kind offer that somebody made me, right? But yet I am likely to say something like, "Do I look like I want to eat dinner right now?" Right? Like, come on. Are you that dumb? Right? Obviously, I would never talk that way to my partner. Maybe I had way back when, but I certainly would never do it now, and I'm not recommending that anybody does that, right? Because that's where we come into a problem, right? Because now what happens, right? Now I say that to my wife, my partner, and now my partner, she's going to feel some emotional reactivity based on what I just said, right? And maybe, this goes to something where, I don't like being talked to that way for whatever reason, right? Again, maybe as a child she was talked to that way and it really hurt her. And so now she is going to have a reaction to me, right? And that reaction to something like that is most likely not going to be like, "Oh, sweetie, it's okay. You can walk all over me. It doesn't matter. Kick me while I'm down. I love it. It's fine." No, of course not. No, what she's going to say is, "You don't have to talk to me like that, And then I come back and I say, "Well, you didn't have to talk to me when I just came in the door." And then she says, "Well, you didn't have to do this." And I say, "We didn't." And you see what happens? So you just keep going and going and going and going, right? And it just becomes like this ping pong game, right? Where she's reacting to something, then I'm reacting to something, then she's reacting to something, and I'm reacting to something, and boom, 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 right? And that can go on for hours, maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe you get a divorce over that kind of thing, right? And so my point is that now that has caused so much more, more difficulty and more suffering than it needed to be, because in the end it was just a simple question, right? So now let's change that scenario around, right? Let's change the scenario around to the point where, where I know that I was triggered at work today, and it took me a few minutes to regulate myself back to where I am, right? And it still bothers me what this thing that this person said to me, right, or did to me, and I still have, I'm trying to kind of grapple with, with the logic of it, and trying to figure out how to, how to kind of, resolve this problem with this person or something like that, right? But if I'm regulated, right, and I'm no longer feeling the anger, and I'm just contemplating what can I do to change this situation, that's a completely different thing. Because now the energy of my brain is not in that emotional, reactive, super, tweaky kind of place. It's now up here where I'm thinking. Right, and so now I can come back into my house, right, at the end of the day, and now I'm more likely to say something when my partner comes to me and says, hey, you're home late. Do you still want dinner tonight? Right? Do you want me to make dinner now? Something like that. I can then say, you know what, I really appreciate your offer, but I'm really feeling like something kind of hard happened to me today at work, so I thought maybe I would take a nice shower and maybe do a little meditation to try to get myself, feeling good. So if it's possible to wait for dinner, that would be best for me. But if you need to eat now, you can go ahead, and I'll just fix myself something after, right? Now you see, nothing, materially changed in the conversation, right? It's still the same very basic conversation, but what I removed then was that anger and the expression of the anger, which is going to cause more problems, right? And now let's take that even a step further, and let's say at that moment I still am very feeling that anger, right? Then I still have the opportunity to regulate that anger from the top down and say something along the lines of, you know what? I don't want to say something rude right now because I'm feeling very, very overwhelmed with the emotion of anger because of something that happened at work today. So I kindly ask you, please, to give me a little space right now. I'm trying to regulate myself. I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to try to get myself calmed down. If you need to eat dinner, you go ahead. I'll fend for myself. I love you, and I'll talk to you in a bit, right? Now, I mean, what could anybody say to that, right? I mean, all that my partner really could legitimately say at that point is thank you. Thank you for letting me know, and thank you for not walking all over me and taking your anger out on me, right? Because the idea here, and the reason why it's about kind of, working on ourselves, right? And a lot of it has to do with giving ourselves this sort of, very clean signal, right? Like the emotions that we feel, and the especially when the emotions become, very overwhelming, and start to get into the stress response in our body, right? What that's causing, it's causing kind of like a static, right? It's causing almost like a static, or even almost like a little delay, right? Between me and everything that's happening to me, right? It's creating something in between, right? And something that makes it hard to be present and to be, kind of, there to show up to the people in my life, and even to myself, right? And so when I can regulate these emotions, right, what that essentially doing is kind of clearing the signal, right? Like if you ever, I'm dating myself here, nobody has radios where you dial anymore, but if you're a kid like me, maybe some of you are old enough to know this, but if you had a radio station you really wanted to listen to, right, you would, kind of keep going back and forth with the dial until you got that cleanest signal you could get, right? And it could be just a 30-second of a turn, right, that made the difference between a very staticky voice on the radio and a somewhat clear voice on the radio, right? And so the idea is that as we go through our lives, and as we go through our interactions with others, right, we can constantly work in every moment. We can constantly and I hesitate to say the word work because it makes it sound like it's a big hard thing to do, and it's not. It's really not. But what we can do is from moment to moment, we can be sort of constantly checking in with ourselves and saying like, am I regulated right now or am I dysregulated right now? And if I'm dysregulated right now, what do I need to do to regulate right now? Right? And again, that clean signal that we get is how we know whether we're regulated or we're not regulated. Right? And that becomes our greatest strength, is to be able to regulate that so that now we're there. Because the thing is that we are sort of like this medium, right? This kind of contact point between the outer experiences that we're having and the inner experiences that we're having, right? And so when we can, kind of keep that clean and keep that clear, now that contact point is something that can be very, very beautiful and exciting in our lives, right? But if we don't have that clean contact, then it's like sometimes the light comes on, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it flickers, sometimes it's just not, we're not able to perform in our lives, we're not able to show up, right? And therefore we're not able to give what we have to give to this life, right? Which is our gifts, which is our abilities to be, kind and to be helpful and to be supportive to others and to be, happy, right? And so that's why we talk about it's, and even when I talk to parents, and this is something that, a lot of parents get their, I've seen some people get pretty upset about this. And it's not just me either. I mean, I've talked to other people who work with parents, and and they say that, which is the experience that I share, is that the minute I start saying to people that, well, it's not really your child that we need to work on. It's not about figuring out some method to make your child eat their vegetables or go to bed on time or brush their teeth or something like that. In almost every case, it's something within us as the parents that is causing all of the difficulty, right? And of course, yes, there is something inside your child too, right? That matters too. Like, and the best thing we can do is teach them how to regulate themselves, But the ultimate thing is that to be a good parent, right? To be the best parent available to your child, you are the best parent available to your child, no matter what. You have a genetic coding that is an exact match to your child. There's nobody more equipped to handle it, to parenting your child than you, right? And so, but it's the you that is regulated, and that is that clean signal. It's the you that is present and able to accept what is happening as it's happening, able to be compassionate and curious. That is the greatest parent, right? Anything that's not that is where the problems arise from. And again, this happens in parenting, this happens in marriages, this happens in friendships, this happens in work relationships, this happens virtually in every single human to human contact, or even animal to human contact, right? This happens with pets, pets who get depressed. In fact, there's a great, amazing person out there called the dog whisperer. And one of my clients told me about this person. And, his whole thing is that it's not about training the dog. It's about regulating yourself. Right? If you recall, I talk about a lot the empathic resonance, right? That when, even an animal, right? But certainly also your partner, your child, your friends, your coworkers, right? When something is going on inside of you, people can sense it. People can feel it. There's a resonance that happens. Just like, if you go into an acoustic guitar store and you pluck the string on this guitar, the strings on that guitar are also going to resonate with it. They're going to sound with that because it's a vibration that's happening, right? It's an energetic, field that's happening. And the same thing happens from person to person, right? And so that's the whole thing, right? Is that if we can regulate ourselves, if we can work on ourselves, then not only are we taking in a clear signal, not only are we able to then say, like, wow, this person is using a very loud voice and these words that they're using seem to be in the effort to hurt me. Isn't that interesting, right? Like, we can have that reaction to somebody screaming at us, right? We don't have to have the reaction of, oh, no, no, you're not going to scream at me, I'm going to scream back at you, right? It doesn't have to be that way, because again, that just goes on and on and on and never stops, right? But we always have the opportunity to not only take in a clear, non-judging signal, but also to exude a clean and non-judging signal, right? And again, it all hinges on the ability to regulate ourselves, to bring ourselves back to this point where we are able to see clearly what is happening, really clearly what is actually happening, and to do so without clinging or aversion. And that will relieve all the suffering. And so how do you do this? Through simple practices. Okay, and again, if you would like to learn some of these simple practices, I am here to teach them to you. Okay, and I'm here to help you to incorporate them into your life, right? And again, a lot of times people feel like, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to make practice. I don't have time to do this. I'm too busy. And in my head, I mean, I never say this to anybody outwardly, but in my mind, I'm kind of like, yeah, you're too busy suffering needlessly. And if you can just make 5 minutes a day, you won't suffer anymore. And then you'll be happy. And then once you're happy and free of suffering, now you can accomplish anything in your life. And I mean anything. And so that is another point, right? Is that by dysregulating or the inability to regulate ourselves is where all of our problems come from. All of our shortcomings, all of our inability to accomplish things in our lives, right? It all comes from the same place. And so once you can learn the technique and practice the technique so you build the skill, that is when you can just say goodbye to the days of suffering and say hello to the days of unlimited accomplishment, personally, professionally, romantically, parentally, musically, golf. I even have a client whose golf score has gone down. You want the scores to be lower in golf, so his golf scores have gone down by like almost 10 strokes. Not because I taught him how to do anything to play golf. All I did was teach him how to regulate himself, because as they say in golf, it's all about, the biggest challenge in golf is letting go of that last shot that you hit into the woods and making this shot count. And that's metaphoric for exactly what I'm talking about, right? Every single moment is an opportunity to let go of what just happened and be here right now and regulate right now. And every moment offers us that opportunity. And when we can look at life as a moment-to-moment arising experience, that's when we can take advantage and we can actually perform and accomplish this regulation and this ability to be here right now. So that's it for today. If you got any questions or you want to learn how to do some of these practices or you want to get some help with them, well, that's what I'm here for. Okay, and I strongly encourage you and invite you very warmly to go to my website, artburnscoaching.com. Simply click on the link. There's a banner at the bottom of every page that has a clock on it. It says schedule a free call or something like that. It's a free coaching session, folks. And there's so few people who take advantage of this. And, some people do. And I would say that's probably... there's a significant amount of people who go through the first coaching session and don't wind up doing another. And that's fine. They still get a lot of benefit. And I'm still going to teach you how to meditate. And I'm still going to send you some information that will help you, okay? And you can still watch the podcast and the videos, But the idea is that this is a free resource for you. And it's there for you. And it's ready for you. All you got to do is go to the website and make the call. All right, or book the call, and it's super simple. The process, I invite you just to check it, just to see how ridiculously simple it is. All right, so that's all I'm going to say on that. I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. To talk more about this and to maybe give you a personal, story about how this all works. How it used to work for me, and I can illustrate what I'm talking about here through my own story. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I wish you well, and I'll be back again tomorrow. But please, if you have any questions about this or you want to book a call with me, please just reach out. Okay, you don't have to pay me for clarification. If you have questions on this, I will answer them. If you want to, figure out how to do some of these practices, I will help you do that. Okay, so just reach out. All right. Thanks again. I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.